Hello everyone. I hope everyone had an excellent week. I have had um, a very slow one. Loads of work, little downtime, but not really what I needed. Today's my only day off, and then I'm back to the grind. But I'm still here with you working. So really, is it a day off? No, it really is. I enjoy my time here. Okay, my daughter made me this. Brought me to absolute tears. It's a little crochet flower. Oh my god, she's just adorable. So there's my little obsessive moment. Okay. Um, really wish sometimes you'd tell me in the comments how your week went because I know that stuff super interests me. Okay, this week we have New South Wales LMP um, homes rated. ALBO makes a very good place in history. Well, in a magazine, I suppose. Stuart Roberts probe. I'm just going to quickly do audio. Yep, you've got me. Murdoch violations. And then we're going to talk about the voice. Now, I know that like when the Royal Commission was on for Robodebt, I consumed a lot of your time with that. It was because I feel like there is an angle that I'm going for, and it's very particular. And I don't want to do the narrative of what the media does, but they're like, I don't know if they're lying and I can't tell. I'm just going to tell you both sides. No, I'm going to tell you flat out if someone's like bullshitting to you. This is not the place where you come if you want to hear, I don't really know what happened sort of scenario. You're actually going to hear piece by piece exactly how I think things went down. And I prove it with bits of information that help you understand it all better. And trust me, by the time we're done, you will feel better about the whole thing. All right. So this is an ICAC probe that we're looking at. And this is a super interesting thing that has taken place. One, it's brand new, so I haven't really seen a lot of headlines on this. So to my dismay, it become all sucked up by the voice of Peter Dutton because rather conveniently, what the Liberal Party have always been able to do is grab all the voice of any discussion and the media just eats it up. And ALBO's on holidays, which is rightfully earned after a big week, traveling and stuff for work. Must be a very stressful job running a nation. And so Peter Dutton has sort of sucked all the air out of everything. So just so you know, that's why I think this hasn't gotten the heat that it needs. But I think it might. It depends on how friendly the media wants to be with facts. But we'll see where we're at. Okay, Liberal Party members' homes rated by Anti-Corruption Watchdog, according to a report. Now, this is super interesting. What has played out is, I will let you know this front up. A lot of the people that had their homes rated, there are loads of other probes that are taking place, but there was loads of cooperation. These key homes that were targeted were not cooperating. So it wasn't as if, they can claim victimhood later. All they had to do was cooperate. That was it. I'm not this huge fan of the police or handing over everything, but this is for a purpose. This is just information intel. And if you work in government, it's quite simple. You can even just get staff to hand it all over. Turns out they weren't even willing to do that. Pieces of technology that is owned by the taxpayer that they just wanted to get access to. Turns out that they weren't even willing to do that. Okay, the homes of past and present New South Wales party members have been reportedly raided as part of an anti-corruption investigation. Now, the fact that there's some past members, that's disturbing that they didn't cooperate. I don't know if they thought that the police were just going to go away or if they were friendly enough with them that they were just going to not come back. But this is a real investigation. I would invite that if police do have a search warrant, it's probably best to just go with what needs to be done. I've never been through something like this, so I don't know how it appears. Not like this. Laptops, phones were seized during the raids conducted during the week by New South Wales Independent Commission Against Corruption. The Sunday Telegraph first reported it. So if the Sunday Telegraph first reported it, you can bet that it was like page 60 on it or whatever it is. It's not like blaring headlights and it's made first light. I don't think so. I don't read the junk. The raids were linked to allegations Liberal MP Ray Williams raised under parliamentary privilege in 2022, which the then Premier Dominic Perrott referred to the watchdog. So this sounds like Mr. Perrott originally made the claim. So this was like internal. So that's something to also keep in mind. They're not just going to spuriously show up at your door. There has to be like merits. Parliamentary privilege, though, is a bit of a dicey situation. I've seen it being used to make claims like children overboard, for instance, that were never true, but no one ever got into trouble for it. So remember, parliamentary privilege can be used a little bit dodgy. Mr. Williams claims several senior members of his party were paid to install new councillors on the Hillshire Council who would be friendly to a Sydney developer. Now, I have no idea why that's illegal. I think it is because maybe spots that were meant for environmental impact reasons or whatever. I don't know exactly the legality behind something like that. That there must be a good reason that they're tendered out properly and that there's a proper system in place for that. But no, I don't know the legal reasons behind that. The allegation sparked a parliamentary inquiry into the lead up into the March 25th election that had heard allegations Liberal power brokers sought to branch stack federal deputy leader Susan Lee's electorate of Farah in late 2020 in a ploy to take the seat for himself. Liberal branch stacking is not new. In fact, both parties have been accused of exactly that at different times. I'm not going to lie to you here. There's no point. So that's a very interesting allegation to start off with. Okay, several members have successfully evaded being summoned to give evidence at the inquiry before it was disbanded when the writs were issued 3 weeks ahead of the election. See, now that seems like it's a deliberate thing. Hold off until I kind of agree with how they do this, though. To not politicize it, so they're not just arresting people before an election before there's proof. So I don't know if I'm being fair and just, I can understand why it was handled like that. Because handing out arrest warrants before an election that they're currently running in doesn't bode well for the candidate on any side. But I believe that we should be fully aware of what it is that they're after. Otherwise, you would have people that could just make up insane claims and then you get arrested and charged as a result, and there may be nothing to it. That's rare, but it does happen. And I just want to be very careful about how those details are handled. Mr. Perrott in March said that the allegations were tabled into the inquiry and were being internally investigated. The Liberal Party will look into those matters and any wrongdoing found if appropriate action will be taken. ICAC has been contacted for comment. Now, the reason that ICAC would not respond to a basic "Hi, how are you?" from the media is because the idea behind that is for not destroying parts of the investigation. A little bit like how you'll hear the police at a certain crime scene say, look, we can't share certain details with you right now. This is much the same thing. I don't know if this is a crime scene, but there's definitely a possible problem here. Remember, Gladys Berejiklian looked guilty as sin for her little moment in the ICAC inquiry. And Mike Baird hopped out really quickly when things started to get interesting, and apparently took a 3 months away from the job and then jumped into some banking job because apparently his sister was fine. And it's a little bit dodgy. Family reasons, they just get to make up stuff. So whenever you hear a politician say family reasons, doesn't matter, I'm generally a little bit skeptical about it. I just wanted to spend more time home with the family. 3 months later, they're heading some committee that they help sort out as a job in government. That's what I've seen lately, but that's just me being a cynic. Okay. So looking at that, there's going to be more that comes from that. Do not assume that story is over. It won't be. Okay. ALBO makes the Times 100 influential people. Now, this is really, really, really good because much like how Wayne Swan achieved being one of the best treasurers in the world during the great financial crisis, because he managed to avoid it and acted accordingly and had the ability to overcome that, even though this is the attack that the Liberals quite often use for it's debt, So much like that, I think this is a great moment. ALBO has definitely passed a lot of legislation that is positive, and that will make things really good for the nation. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has been named as one of Time's 100 most influential people in the world. The yearly list highlights the achievements and the artists, leaders, innovators, and other significant figures from around the world. Albanese was included as one of the most influential leaders in the world as he draws near to making 1 year in office. Albanese's inclusion into the list was accompanied by the introduction from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who called Australian counterpart as a symbol of hope and inspiration. Remember that the French called Scott Morrison a liar. Macron, he said, I don't think he lied. I know he lied. So this was, ALBO has had to do a lot of traveling to sort of fix up a lot of the allies, to help out a lot internationally as well as pass a lot of legislation and get the voice on track. So there's a lot going on. Trudeau gave credit to Albanese's origins, highlighting the fact that he grew up in a public housing in Sydney's inner west. Praising Albanese's ascent to political leadership, Trudeau said, the idea that no matter who you are or where you come from, you should have every chance to succeed in life. Now, that I think is a very positive message. And you know what? Good on ALBO. I think he made the list along with others. So Joe Biden made the list. And hold on. Albanese was included in the list alongside political leaders from around the world, both sides of the political spectrum. President of the United States, Joe Biden, was included in the list alongside US Republican leader Mitch McConnell, the shitbag who put in Wade versus Roe. That guy, because who can forget the guy who takes away women's rights at a moment's notice? That guy. Ukrainian First Lady Olena Zelenska Brazil's veteran president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva made the grade, with Grammy Chancellor Olaf Scholz also lauded. Notable political absences, however, were noted for China's President Xi and French President Emmanuel Macron. Now, those were notable because for two reasons. China isn't going to do that because to them it's a bit of a weird thing for them to rock up to, since how Americans talk about China. Secondly, Emmanuel Macron has a few things going on. When we're not feeling on fire here, I'm going to talk about the literal on fire in France. Turns out his pension reforms aren't exactly going to plan, and yeah, it's not a great look. Okay. So this is part of what I think will be a positive outlook for our nation. I believe that it takes a lot to turn us into the kind of respectability that we've had before. Even under Howard, it was a little bit more, respectable. But, I mean, even he was a bit, oh, that's cringy to even think about. But yeah, particularly with the influence of someone like Penny Wong as foreign minister, I think that's a really great thing. So when I'm looking at it from a 30,000 feet view, I do think ALP has an amazing team. Okay, so next one, Stuart Roberts probe. Now, I don't know if you've seen this. This is a super interesting story. Turns out they're all a little bit dodgy and they do these dodgy things, and then you're like, what'd you do that for? So it's not just, oh, I forgot one. 1 second. I didn't realize I forgot one, and I did. I checked that twice and I just found it. Okay, so Stuart Roberts. Now, what did he do to get to this point? Well, if you want to start off with Rolex watches, no, that's not this one. This is another one. What about the internet bill? No, that's not this one. This is another one. Oh, what about the times where he's just wholeheartedly made stuff up about, he thought the Rolex that he had was fake. No, that's not this one. This is a whole separate thing. See, that's what I mean. Corruption is so inbuilt in the LNP. You're like, which level of corruption could you be discussing today? It's a little weird, right? And you never know which direction it's going to go. They're in a very interesting lot. It's a little bit like Trump. You're kind of wondering which probe we're going to be discussing. And then you're like, I hadn't heard that one. Okay, so here we go. So I don't know if you've heard about this Synergy 360. I have discussed several times about a comment from, what's it? Might have been Jim Chalmers that I first heard say, hey, this Synergy 360, no, Bill Shorten. Gotcha. Names will always evade me, but I remember hearing the speech. Got it. Bill Shorten was talking about this underneath Parliament. And listening to it, I was like, well, and then Stuart Roberts tried to make some nefarious claim of maybe Labor made it up. And then we're like, no, totally not possible. Let's get to reality. Turns out Stuart Roberts did something super dodgy and used his national security powers that he was sitting on a committee of to gain financially into a company that was addressed as Energy 360. Now, why would you do something like that? Because you can make a bucket load of money and you can do it underneath the guise of helping the nation. The helping part. You know, this is how dodgy they truly are. Okay, so Senior Liberal MP Stuart Roberts stood to gain financially out of a consulting company called Synergy 360, which is part owned by his business partner and chief political fundraiser, which helped multinational companies win millions of dollars worth of government contracts. The former government service minister and friend and co-owner of the controversial firm, John Margerison. Yeah, Marjorie's. No, okay. Names are hard. Gave the evidence before a parliamentary committee on Friday that Robert was part owner of at a company that John was nominated to receive funds of Energy 360. The revelation that John had sent an email in 2017 directing that his accountant earning from Energy 360 sent to a company part owned by Stuart is the first time the scandal has been revealed that Stuart stood to gain financially from Synergy's operations. The company received informal advice from both Stuart as a backbencher and as a minister about how to secure potential business deals for its corporate clients. The companies that used Synergy 360 were pursuing large technology contracts, property deals, and consulting projects. The Age and the Herald have previously revealed that Stuart was advised Synergy 360 on a business opportunity that he encountered its capacity as a member of parliament. So do keep in mind that he was underneath the parliamentary privilege. Bill Shorten revealed that he would receive within the first 12 months of this business opening, thanks to government help, that it would receive up to $1 million in its first 12 months, when most businesses don't break 100,000 in profit. So that's something to remember as you're hearing this. Stuart Roberts met Synergy's clients as they sought to win large contracts with the federal government. One such a meeting took place at John's Gold Coast home in 2017. That was attended by Stuart. Synergy's 360 majority owner, David Milo, one of Synergy's clients, Eunice. Roberts previously dismissed allegations that the support of Synergy 360 went further than the support he provided to other stakeholders and constituents. And then he denied he was seeking the use of the status as PM to promote the commercial interests of friends. John said that he'd never received any money from Synergy. I've never received any dividends or any payment from Milo Consulting, the trade name of Synergy, he told Inquiry. Robert declared his shareholding in the APT on the Register of Members in Interest in May 2017. John told the committee that he had business relationships with Stuart, which had finished towards the end of 2018. Stuart became an assistant treasurer in August that year and was Minister of Government Services and National Disability Insurance Scheme from 2019. In response to a question about whether he'd received any benefit from Synergy via the property trust, Robert's spokesman said again he rejects any imputation or allegations of improper conduct you assert in the inquiry. From evidence provided to the committee today, it is clear Bill Shorten and the Sydney Morning Herald have used stolen, allegedly tampered it with emails. So this is the point that I was getting to, that they're just going to whole make stuff up. It doesn't matter what the facts are. He was going to change that narrative. For purposes, there are articles that have asserted improper conduct, to which Mr. Stuart Roberts has strenuously, consistently rejected. But do keep in mind, underneath their weird national security things, that they can alter emails. They can take out and make it look like someone is guilty. So someone that would want to make you look like you did something wrong, they could do that. But here's the deal. Why introduce the legislation and then be afraid that it might be used against you like that? Me thinks that you didn't realize that one day that you might have been out of a government. That's what I'm going with. Shorten said that it was not the first time Robert had faced scrutiny about the financial interest. In light of John's evidence today, Mr. Roberts must now detail to the Australian public whether he ever directly or indirectly received financial benefit from Synergy 360. Synergy's owner, Muller, asserted that under questioning from the chairman of the Parliament Audit Committee, Julian Hill, that he'd leaked emails that prompted inquiries into Synergy 360's interaction had been stolen. In a testimony before the committee, co-owner of Synergy 360, Cam Xavier, had revealed that senior public servant linked to the contract given to her company was a brother of her best friend and that she'd known him for 20 years. The public servant was Dr. Damien West. Senior official said the inquiry that West had not disclosed his personal relationship with Xavier. The Chief Financial Officer, Services Australia, Angela Diamond, told the inquiry that under public service rules, any political, perceived or real conflict should be declared. The committee chairman, Hill, said that one of the contracts in question was for $9,600, just under the $10,000 threshold. So they knew exactly what they were doing. They were flying under the radar of the $10,000 hit. That is guilt by design. Why would you just scrape it, just touch it to the tip and then go, you know, it's dodgy. Which requires more scrutiny. Once it was in place, the contract was varied at $29,000, a process that is not subject to as much scrutiny. So once you get to a little bit higher, another was worth $79,000, which is $1,000 less than the threshold requires for a tender process. Because, of course, it only just scraped in to sort of get to that point where we were like, no, we should totally know about that. That's why this threshold thing is stupid. To me, it's if I get $20, $30 of whatever money is donated to me here, I tell you now, this is the dodgiest thing I've ever heard. Okay, so you hand me money. I need to be accountable to that. I need to make sure that my taxes are clear and that I'm not making too much here or there. You know, that's $20. These people are like 10 grand, you know, it's 79,000. It's $1,000 under what would make it more, where more scrutiny should be looked into this kind of thing. No one could hand me that kind of money and people would be like, no one would be going, well, nothing to see there. That's not unusual. This is all normal daily business. It's bizarre to all levels of insanity. West said at the time he was general manager of the Business Integrity Services Australia. He met with the owner of Synergy 360 for drinks at Zavena's house. At the time, the consulting firm was being paid its corporate clients to advise them of how to win contracts from Services Australia. Yeah, that doesn't look dodgy. Personal drinks at a friend's house to talk about a government contract and how to get it over the line. Don't know why that would look dodgy. Do you know why that would look dodgy? Yeah, no. They socialised with Milo on several occasions, including at a Canberra pub. Excuse me. When asked about his relationship with Zavena, West told the Age and Herald recently, she's a friend of mine. Earlier in the hearing, Executives Australia Rebecca Skinner told Parliamentary Committee inquiry that should be further investigating a number of matters that are raised. Skinner told the committee that Services Australia had engaged an independent investigator to investigate the contracts involving West. Asked by the chairman of the committee, Labor MP Julian Hill, if there would be a need to be different, more thorough investigation which has the power to compel evidence. And the witness, Skinner, said that's correct. So there's going to be more to this. And it's not going to end here. They've definitely done something that has warranted an inquiry. But it's not just him. Barnaby has his own little shit show going on, and I thought I added this in the timeline, and I didn't. That's what I was quickly adding. Turns out Barnaby Joyce and Simon Birmingham have their own little damaging report. So there is an inland rail project. Not only has it gone over budget, surprise, surprise, MBN, but turns out that they were getting buddies to sit on the board to make this possible. And these buddies weren't exactly qualified. Now, that's a little odd that you would want what was we'll check the, okay, here we go. I want to find the part. The ministers did not issue a press release announcing the members who, as a non-executive director, are paid $83,000 a year. While not named in the report, the captain's pick of Ryan Arnold, Katrina Hodgkinson, Kira Brennan raised eyebrows within the ARTC, according to a person familiar with the project. Okay, so but she said the areas of expertise were not in line with stated needs of the ARTC, and it struggled to make progress on the immensely complex project of building a 1,700-kilometre line connecting Melbourne to Brisbane. While ministers as shareholders and representatives have every right to appoint whom they choose, they have an obligation to ensure that the business governed properly and means that they are paying attention to the skills needed. Okay, so here's where it gets funny. It does not mention that his role as chair of the Hume Forum, a Liberal Party fundraising vehicle connected to the former minister Angus Taylor. So this reaches out further. So it's not just Barnaby and Simon Birmingham. Now they've roped in Angus Taylor. See, they're not just willing to do criminal stuff alone. They've got like this little cohort that they do it with, and it's so dodgy, and it reeks of nepotism and jobs for the boys and all of those amazing things that you see that come with this. And then they just pay themselves whatever they choose. And then you get this cost blowout like what you see here. And then you're like, well, where's the inland rail project? Why hasn't anything happened? This is why, people. This is why. Okay, so records showed it donated $180,000 to the party in 2018-2019, and a further $33,000 classified as other receipts. The master had asked via the ARTC if it was still involved, but was received no response. Okay. And then it turns out that Hodgkinson unsuccessfully ran for the national seat of Gilmore in 2019 federal election. Okay. And that she was previously the vice president. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the ARTC is the government-owned body chosen to build the inland rail and responsible for Australia's freight networks. It makes revenue of about $900 million a year, almost half of that from coal and freight fees. Labor appointed infrastructure expert Peter Duncan as chair in February to replace retiring Warren Truss. Warren Truss I never trusted to begin with. Former federal leader of the Nationals, the party's most vehemently championing of inland rail. Before the 2022 appointments, trust-driven review of the board's mix found that it was weak in key areas in the part that you need to have an inland rail: engineering, safety, procurement, marketing, and environment sustainability, according to the report. The board also rated itself average on rail matters: infrastructure knowledge, project management, logistics, and community sector issues and governance. There's nothing astonishing about these skill requirements for the ARTC, and in fact, ARTC has assured me that its desired skill mix was made to know the shareholder ministers of the former government were responsible for the latest round of board appointees. Okay, so let's talk about this part. The head of Energy Security Board estimated the inland rail costs more than 30 billion compared to the 4.7 billion in projection of the 2015 case. Yeah, I don't think you can trust a Liberal with anything. Not only do they like cock it up in every way possible and they don't get the right people, the right set skill for the job, but then they just like cock it up even further and then just waste heaps of money on it. And now there's nothing to show for it at this point. Meanwhile, this started in 2015, the beginning of all the contracts. We are now at 2023 and there's no hide nor hair of any idea of when this is set to be done. That's the other part about this. That's the next part. Projection to the 2015 business case and miss its 2027 deadline by half a decade. Huh? Because all of this is normal. I do not know how we get here. This is cringe on top of cringe. Because they do things so badly now it all has to be sort of undone and rebuilt, which is going to cost more. Because when Labor gets in like they have to rebuild this from the ground up. And it's already at $30 billion. We don't know what's being done and we don't know what works. So here we are. And then they've still got these weird cronies, some of them still sitting on this board, which donated to the Liberal Party. So I'm thinking at this point, they've done it again. They've done an NBN 2.0. That's all I can gather from this system. This is NBN 2.0. Like, as if the NBN wasn't already a shit show. They showed us, we'll give it another run. We'll try another project. This was their baby, their way of getting coal to move the nation. That's what the Inland Rail project was mostly for. It will be used. There are some private entities and some of this had to do with the Adani coal mine and the rail link that they wanted. And like, if you have a look at the case study behind this, you can see why this was going to end awfully, because these, like Adani wanted his private rail network, but paid by taxpayers. No, I don't have to point this out, but that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. You can't have a private railway line paid by taxpayers. No, you're not doing that. It's not happening. They do this with roads all the time. They build a road and then they go, no, it's going to cost so much to keep the upkeep on it, so we're just going to put a toll there and then give it out to some company. And then when we have to buy it all back, it's this shitty little thing that's never maintained properly. It's a shambles, and they don't do it right. The scale of the delays, cost blowouts were not the result of the 3 relatively new board members, but their appointments are dubious in the view of underscore the problematic governance and arrangements to believe the prime contributions, the Inland Rail's regrettable situation. Yeah, when you call it regrettable, it doesn't look great, does it? That's the thing with these. I thought the NBN was the dumbest handling that they could have done. NDIS, they managed to cock that up and privatize many arms of that. And the cost blowouts were astronomical because they kept privatizing parts of that. And I thought, well, they won't be this stupid. They're going to have to, toe the line on some of this stuff. They don't want to look wasteful or anything. No, it turns out that this all checks out and they're just spending money like it's, nothing. It's your money, not theirs. Why would they care? And they just give the jobs to their buddies. Okay. It turns out Rupert Murdoch has had violations. Because every week I like to talk to you about I like to find something that Rupert Murdoch is clearly guilty of. Because there's so much that he does to delegitimize democracy and then thinks that he's king of the world. And really, it turns out that this is the same guy who hacked a dead little girl's phone and pretended like she was alive, and she wasn't, and her parents were strung along for quite a bit so Rupert Murdoch could get headlines. That got his newspaper, The Sun, shut down. But he also hacked the Queen. You would think that would be like, no, done, you're done. There is no coming back from this. You hacked the Queen, it's sovereignty and all that kind of crap. You would think that's the point where they're like, yeah, you're done. Turns out, no. The guy is more insidious than ever. He didn't just give us like Tony Abbott, Scott Morrison, Malcolm Turnbull. He also gave us people like Trump and George Bush. Keep that all in mind. When evil does as bad as what Rupert Murdoch does, of course I'm going to make it my life's effort to make sure people know about it. So, next one. Here we go, people. News Corp condemned for malicious lies and attacks against minorities. Sounds like it's on track to be one of these, Sunday things that he does. It's like when he supported Peter Dutton's grotesque African crime gangs. You look at him and the children overboard claims. He knows what he is. He's an insidious, horrible human. But, he'll tell you that he has Christian values. Ugh, it's gross. I'm glad the recent marriage thing failed. Australia's official media watchdog has found 3/4 of recent corrupt complaints upheld for violations of media and ethical principles were against Rupert Murdoch's. News Corp Alan Austin reports. Now, Alan Austin is a regular member contributor. Thank you, Alan Austin. Just so you know, I hear you and have spoken to you very well in the last few years. Okay, the case for Australia to boost efforts to boycott News Corp publications out of existence has been strengthened by the latest batch of adjudications by the Australian Press Council. Murdoch's malevolent media empire disappears entirely. So, this comes on the back of knowing that also that it is being sued by Dominion and eventually Smartmatic for Fox's role in what it does in the United States. Turns out that if you have too many tentacles running around, some of them are going to get taken off little parts. Deliberate falsehoods. The Herald Sun provided a classic example of how News Corp routinely manipulates political discourse in countries where it operates. In a arena attack piece last November, headed Daniel Andrews, chief of staff, met with election fixer. Just let that settle in of what he did. He made up a claim that Dan Andrews was fixing elections. That isn't just repulsive, it's flat out wrong. He's doing this underneath the guise of news. Keep that in mind as you're watching the shit show take place. It's hideous. His headline was like this: oh no, the Victorian Premier had been caught fixing elections. How dastardly. But it turns out Andrews had no contact with the notorious fixer at all. A staffer had met jury once, and that was in 2019. It had nothing to do with the 2022 election. The Press Council found the Tory tabloid failed to take reasonable steps to present factual material with reasonable fairness. That is putting it extremely mildly. But then it goes on to racist attacks, because why not? Race bait the whole public in thinking that a minority group is worse than, white people, because that's how it should work, right? This is their whole part of it. Conjecture, projection. It doesn't matter how nefarious he has been over the years. He will always be the racist suckhole that will drain democracy as a whole. That's not a question. It is a fact. Okay, the Courier Mail in Queensland published a malicious opinion piece in 2021 headed only Parents Can Fix Youth Crime Curse, which claimed many Indigenous parents routinely abandon responsibilities and do little to instill their children with respect for our laws and the property of others. Because he can just wholeheartedly make stuff up. And this benefits him a lot because while you're looking at what he says that the minorities are doing, they're not looking at what the Liberals are really doing. They're not looking at the kind of seedy undertone of the people that he puts in power, like Scott Morrison, like Tony Abbott, and many others. This is just grotesque in nature. I have no idea why he thought that this was going to slip underneath the radar in the middle of his Dominion lawsuit proceedings. I hope Dominion buries him. I hope that he has this interesting thing in the United States where we thought pulling his ad revenue would be the crux of him not being able to keep Tucker Carlson. Turns out how he's really making money is with cable box companies like Foxtel, those. And what he does is he will say to them, I don't need the ad revenue. I need you to add a fee to each cable box to stream my news. Now, Brian Tyler Cohen has done an amazing job of dealing with that very insidious problem. And there is a website called Unfox by Cable Fox and Cable Box. And what happens is that you get Americans to sign up to this petition that forces cable companies to drop Rupert Murdoch and his money-making schemes attached to their cable bills. So that's how that's working out. I'm hoping that eventually this is what we're going to do here. But remember, they were handed the rights to sports and other insane things because the Liberals need to hand him that. Because without the help of Rupert Murdoch, do you think someone as awful as Tony Abbott eating an onion would have made him an election-winning guy? I mean, really, it was Rupert Murdoch's idea to put blue ties on him and make him presentable to the public. And then it's rather convenient that Peter Credlin can get a job on Sky News, which is also owned by none other than Rupert Murdoch. And then Shari Markson can run around and make whatever claim that she wants to about, making up whatever stories she wants. Rachel Baxdale attacking Dean Andrews. They're all part of it. And then you've got Miranda Devine. That's not even her real name. And that's the thing. Same as Tucker Carlson. I don't think that's his real name either. I'm going to give you that now. I want to know. I know that it's something else. No, that one is it. Tucker Swanson McNee Carlson. He's part of the Swanson dynasty that made TV dinners. So that's where his money comes from. Swanson side. Once again, most of the APC's resources over the last 2 years were spent on complaints against the one media organisation, the Murdoch Family's News Corp. Of the 44 complaints fully investigated in May 2021 to April 2023, there were 33 against Rupert Murdoch's publication, of which 75% of the 36 articles in breach, 27 were from News Corp, also 75%. Yep. Of the 9 non-Murdoch articles found to have breached council principles agreed by all member organisations, 450 publications. 3 were from Sydney Morning Herald, and its associates were 3 from the Daily Mail, which is one of Rupert Murdoch's 2, and the Moorabool News. The Murdoch trend line here is that significant column September in 2020 analysis of the APC adjudications found that 62% of complaints upheld were against News Corp outlets by January 2022. This had increased 70% to now 75%. The specific standards were trashed. Principle 1, ensuring factual material is accurate. 11 times breach. Publishing corrections where wrong, breach twice. Fair opinions based on accurate facts, 13 times. Giving a fair right of reply, once. Not publishing method locations of a suicide, 4 times. Avoiding offence, distress, risk of health and safety, 15 times. Publishing material gathered by deceptive means, twice. Andrew Bolt is a repeat offender. Turns out that the Sun Herald columnist and Sky News presenter are part of Rupert Murdoch. His column headed Lockdown's show and had lost its marbles when it published in June 2021, was highly critical of prevailing COVID-19 prevention and strategies. Half of the country is locked down because the state leaders are whipping up fears about the virus less dangerous than than its vaccine. See, that's wholeheartedly made up. Half the country is locked down because the state leaders are whipping up fears about a virus that's less dangerous than its vaccine. So that's vaccine disinformation in 1, and 2, misinformation about the virus. In determining Bolt's story, breach principles 1 and 3, the council wrote that although the article of opinion piece and the publication is nonetheless obligated to take reasonable steps to ensure the factual material is accurate, it found Bolt's assertion that premiers were fueling fears about the virus made without a qualification or context and was inaccurately portrays the risks associated with COVID-19 vaccine and the virus itself. Okay. But not there doesn't seem to be any repercussions for it. We haven't yet established a way of repercussions. If we did, he wouldn't be in business at all. His business model would be shot. If we were to go, no, news is important and we treasure, but clearly we don't. So that's where we're at. Okay. Next one. Now we're going to spend a significant amount of time talking about The Voice. We're going to run into a bit of overtime. Okay, so let's get rid of the ones that were from there. First, we're going to talk about Peter Dutton. He has swallowed a lot of air on this. And the reason that he has is because Anthony Albanese is overseas at this point. And not to be undercut on this, he has to just make up things whole hog. So let's take a look at what he did in 2018 and see how it's faring with what he's doing now. Peter Dutton's repeat on the 2018 about African crime gangs in Melbourne in 2023 has now made similar claims about people in Alice Springs from people eating out at restaurants. Because why tell the lie once when twice it could work? And I mean, this gets him into a lot of trouble. This is not a small thing that he's doing. Okay, so let's have a look at what he did. Listen to this from 2018 to what he's doing now.
Don't see this in New South Wales and Queensland, but the reality is, people are scared to go out to restaurants at the night time because they're followed home by these gangs, home invasions, and cars are stolen. And we just need to call it for what it is. Of course, it's African gang violence.
Help and assistance on the ground here to restore law and order and to make sure that people can go about their lives, can go to a barbecue without being accosted on the way to it or on the way home. That they can go to a restaurant at night, that they can do that safely. And people that we spoke to on the street today.
He did it twice. He didn't learn from the very first time, hey, probably shouldn't do that. He did it twice. You would think the first time when they shamed him about doing it. And then you have Malcolm Turnbull saying, hey, you probably shouldn't have done that. And then he went out and then he's like, no, I'm just going to repeat that same claim just about Alice Springs. Right. But genius here forgot to mention that he cut $44 billion from services for these communities. Rather telling, isn't it, that a man who cut services while in government recently claims to care about these Indigenous communities. The insidious twat hole that he is thought that he could just say it and no one would hold him accountable.
I spoke about exactly that issue. Exactly that issue.
We're going to talk about the little shitbag up behind him too. He's got a little horrible story that you're going to hate. Because, of course, they don't find their best. They find their worst. Yeah, I'm going to use a little Trump one. I find it rather apt for this moment.
And they're just staying at home. And so the economic productivity is lost in this community as well. Tourism numbers are down in Alice Springs because people won't go and stay at the caravan park.
None of that's true. Tourism is actually up, but sure, you know. And the whole people aren't eating out of restaurants, that's not true either.
Don't see this in New South Wales and Queensland, but the reality is, you know, people are scared to go out to restaurants at the night time because they're followed.
That's the thing. He gets to just whole hog say whatever he wants. And we need to call him out for it. It's disgusting. Okay. But that comes off at the back when he come out saying what he did. Julian Lesser took the approach of, well, fine, I'm just going to quit the front bench of the Liberal Party because I believe in the voice. He'd worked with people around it and he knew that it was important and he was part of the details that were in there. So the Liberals know, particularly Ken Wyatt and stuff, they know exactly what this is. Like, let's not mince words. If we're going to be clear with one another, this was bipartisan right up until this point. And then they were like, no, we're just going to toss that.
With the referendum due later this year, I believe the time for the voice has come. I believe in local and regional voices. I believe in a national voice drawn from local and regional bodies, and I will support the referendum being put this year. I believe that the voice can help move the dial on Indigenous education, health, housing, safety, and economic development. A short time ago, I resigned as Shadow Attorney General and Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians. I've had many respectful discussions with colleagues about the voice over the past year. I've listened to their views and they've heard mine, but ultimately I haven't been able to persuade them. It's clear that the Shadow Cabinet and the party room and I have taken a different position in relation to the voice. The Liberal Party believes in conscience and freedom. Unlike almost any other party in the Parliament, the Liberal Party gives backbenchers the freedom to champion the idea.
Yeah, that's a lie too, of course, because he has to make it sound like his party's been the only one to do that.
Ideas they believe in.
He's lying.
I want to exercise that freedom because I intend to campaign for a yes vote. I've loved my work as Shadow Attorney.
Okay, but it doesn't just end there. Hold on. It doesn't end there with Julian. Turns out he went on 7:30. But he wasn't done playing with the semantics. Julian can't help himself. He knows he's a cooked chicken. So now he's done the unbearable and backed himself into a corner. He wants to back the voice, but he can't say too much about Dutton. So here's what he did.
That you believed the voice would move the dial on health and housing, education, security, the economy for Indigenous people. What is it about your colleagues that they don't understand? Now, last night, Ken Wyatt on this programme said that he believed there was no form of words for the voice proposal that Peter Dutton would have agreed to. This morning, you disagreed strongly with what Mr. Wyatt had said. Can you explain to us now exactly what form of words would have convinced Mr Dutton to support the Yes campaign?
Well, I think Peter Dutton came to this with an open mind.
I'm sorry to jump in. Let's go back to the matter at hand, which is what Ken Wyatt said, rather than the general idea of the voice. So what Ken Wyatt said very specifically was that he did not believe that there was a form of words that Mr Dutton was ever going to support in terms of the referendum. Do you believe there is a form of words that Peter Dutton could have supported yesterday? But just to stay with this, are you saying that simply Peter Dutton and his colleagues who disagree with him don't know enough, don't understand enough about the plight of Indigenous people to be in the position that you're in?
I'm absolutely not saying that.
So Mr Dutton described the national voice as made up of Indigenous elites and academics. Is that your understanding of what a national voice would look like?
Look, as I said this morning, I'm not going to provide a running commentary on things that colleagues have said. That's not the role that I'm going to play in this debate.
It's quite a significant...
Yeah, don't want to dispute the narrative. Just have to go with what, his principles, apparently.
Description, though, of something that's now under debate nationally. You're still going to be an MP in the Liberal Party. Does it disturb you that Peter Dutton is using the language that he's using to deride the national voice? Are you concerned he's going to be constantly repeating these claims between now and the referendum?
I support Peter Dutton's leadership 100%. I've travelled with him to remote communities.
Yes, I think let's come back to my question, though. He's made a number of statements about the voice. He's derided it as being going to be made up of elites, academics, a Canberra voice, as if that were an insult. My question is, are you concerned about the kind of language he's using to describe the voice? Well, and Sarah, if so, will you talk to him about it?
Sarah, I'm not going to be here to police language the colleagues use. And that's not what I'm going to be doing in this debate. In
other words, I'm not going to tell you that what he did was wrong. I'm just going to tell you that I'm not going to do anything about it.
But you don't believe it's just a body based in Canberra, do you?
Well,
but notwithstanding, you're prepared to stand by. You've been lauded in the last 24 hours for making a powerful moral decision, but you are prepared in the months ahead to stand by and say nothing if your colleagues use language that derides what would be the voice if the referendum succeeds.
Yeah, it doesn't look great, does it? But what were you expecting? Okay. So then it gets to this. It turns out Karen Andrews had a bit to say because, they do. And she was like, well, not everything's terrible about what we're doing or what we did. So it's not a great reference for your part. Nope, that's not the right one. Okay, so this one. Okay, so she was asked quite clearly. Karen Andrews tried to blame Labor for their MPs standing down from shadow ministry because they kept reminding Julian Lesser that he had previously supported the voice. Then she reflects on the LNP's time in government. Not everything was appalling, apparently. Listen to this.
Whether you agree with everything that the coalition did when it was in government, not everything was appalling. And in fact, there were some pretty significant milestones that were met and achieved by the coalition government. I think it's actually time for the Labor government to get out.
Not everything was appalling. Okay. What parts did you find appalling? There were so many questions that I wanted from this. I feel ripped off from this whole encounter.
They are proactively sell what they're doing, not spend a whole heap of time engaging in personal attacks and trying to blame someone else.
Yeah, and then you were like, Julian Lesser resigned because of Labor. You're an idiot. It wasn't going to work like that.
They have been in government for almost a year. They're probably well past a third of their way through their term of government. They actually need to govern, forget that they are in opposition, forget the attack and...
Really, the attack where you blame Labor for Julian leaving.
Just show some leadership. Whether you agree with everything that the coalition did when it was in government, whether you agree with everything.
That's an appalling moment. Not great. But turns out, hold on. Now my favorite bit. I get to show you the horrible part that's associated with Peter Dutton. Stupid idiot. He was dumb enough to just take interviews. And you're thinking, nah. They don't find their best people to interview. They find an idiot that's willing to say anything that they want to say that fits their narrative. Well, they found this guy, and this guy has been known to promote terrible violence around where he lives. Yeah, because this is all normal, and this guy seems to fit the profile of how the LNP do things. Say the most racist thing that you can, and insinuate that promoting violence will fix it all. Jeez, it's never ending. This never ends. Okay. So it's been revealed the baker who appeared with Peter Dutton today has previously appeared on Sky News, including as a guest on Andrew Bolt and Peter Credlin, and runs a Facebook page which faced criticism for hosting racist comments and promoting violence. It's been revealed because, why not? Because this is who they are, right? But then you have a look at this. So Peter Dutton has been left red-faced after an eagle-eyed Twitter user discovered opposition leader's Baker video edited out the claim that 4 years that had been able to go to rack and ruin. A damaging rebuke of the former coalition's government neglect. See, now when you do something stupid, you realise, this is a part that they don't want you to know, that it's actually against the LNP that he even spoke. Okay.
Now for 4 years has been allowed to go to rack and ruin. I fought for 4 years for this.
Labor has only been in government barely one. This isn't a good look. And this is Peter Dutton's guy.
Save this town. And nothing's been done. It's just escalated and escalated. Now for 4...
But we're not done playing with this idiot. Because we can't be. Okay, Journo stumps Peter Dutton by asking why he hasn't bothered to meet with CEOs of Alice Springs and traditional... Oh, hold on. Okay. Local, it's actually meant to be this one that I'm meant to be putting up. But it's because they're so close together. Peter Dutton was dumb enough to upload this himself because... you upload the criminal, not criminal, but the grimy guy yourself. And you make sure that it sounds like he's a winner. And then you give us a name that we can background check. Thanks, Peter Dutton. You kind of buried yourself on this one. Oh my God, they're dumb. They're so dumb. They're so dumb. Like your fake tradie. Let's go. He's pulling the perfect face of this. Don't you like my pause frames? They're always amazing. Okay. And let's go, Peter Dutton.
We're seriously in trouble in this town. We've got young kids in trouble. No one cares for them. Our territory government doesn't care for them. Our federal government's not caring for them. We've got the elderly people in this town. Nursing homes have been broken into twice this week. Elderly people being broken into in the suburbs here, being bad.
So now he makes these claims. Not one of them's in a police report. That's going to get me to my next part soon. Okay. So, Journo stumps Peter Dutton asking why he hasn't bothered to meet with the CEO of Alice Springs Traditional Owners Organisation, Lihi Apte. I'm no good at names. While he's there in Alice Springs, Peter Dutton said he'd rather speak to shoppers in shopping centres. White people that would just say terribly racist things when they get caught out. He'll upload it to his Twitter account himself to make it self-incriminate himself. Why not? But then it gets more interesting because then he attacks ABC for even asking questions.
We spoke to Lurratippa CEO this morning. Lurratippa is the organisation that represents traditional owners in the town. He said he's in support of it, and he said that you didn't consult with him about the voice when you last visited. The Central Land Council over here has come out advocating for the voice. Why aren't you listening to those organisations?
Well, I'll let those organisations speak for themselves. I've been out speaking to people on the ground. I mean, shoppers in shopping centres.
Shoppers in shopping centres. He's like, no, I'm so credible. I spoke to shoppers, not the people that actually want the voice. No, why would you do that? That's crazy. That's what makes this so good. He miraculously face plants everything he does, and you're watching. You're like, how can you get a scenario where the guy that you're trying to beat is on holidays? You have clear airspace and you still cock it up this badly. It's amazing. But here we are, people. He's not going to last long. It's delicious. And then this guy's like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't see how this is going to, get us any further.
People who are having their businesses boarded up, people who are actually living in the community and aren't afraid to speak out.
We spoke to Lurratippa CEO.
Like I proved earlier, he got proved that this is not the case. And we're going to get into that into a second. And then the police are like, hey, if you've got a claim, maybe you should have came to us. Maybe you shouldn't have just had some guy spewing all this information of an actual crime without coming to us. See, now it's almost like, I don't know, watching the LNP crumble before our very eyes. He could have used this to better himself. He had clear airspace. Peter Dutton had that moment where all the media is his stage, and he went and found some guy that promotes violence in Alice Springs. A guy that sat on Andrew Bolt panel that should have been like, no, you've sat on Andrew Bolt's panel and Peter Credlin's. It's not going to look good. This cannot go well. There's footage of you saying really terrible things. Really? And he thought that he would run this. Okay, let's do that. I don't know how they get away with it. Okay, here we go. New Northern Territory Police Minister reacts angrily to Peter Dutton's claims of Alice Spring child sexual abuse, because it wasn't done there. Because much like that woman that went around making interviews about how she'd witnessed all these children, turns out that she wasn't working as a healthcare person in Western Australia. I think it was Western Australia. She was actually a nail technician, which there's nothing wrong with that. I obviously get my nails done. It's not a, but she can't go around making claims about, meeting children in this or that background as a specific employment, and then pretend like she was coming from a credible place. It's like the fake tradie thing all over again. These people are terrible. Traditional owners call on opposition leaders' claims insulting, and Labor demands he stop using the towns as a political football, which is what he did. Excuse me. Okay. The NT Police Minister and prominent Aboriginal Territorians have reacted angrily to Peter Dutton's claims that young Indigenous people are being sexually assaulted on a regular basis in Alice Springs, saying that he should report any wrongdoing to police to further their investigation. So now he's actively harming their families. Much like when they made up the children overboard claim. They just get to say anything, or African crime gangs. They just get to say it. And they get to say, well, I heard. They don't have to qualify it with any real facts. Okay. Kate Warden, the police minister, told reports on Thursday, what we've seen over the last couple of days from Peter Dutton in Central Australia is absolutely opportunistic, a political game, and using the most vulnerable people in the heart of our nation as a pawn in the game, as it's quite frankly a dog act. I will make this claim to Peter Dutton as a former police officer. That you can't just make claims, and particularly publicly like that. about a situation and know of a crime and not report it to police. And if you falsely make a claim, that is also a crime. Peter Dutton, you may have inadvertently committed a crime. Now, go back to Alice Springs and make those claims. If not, I would stop doing it. It's not a good look, buddy. He could have done anything with his time. His own note of party room was like, no, you absolutely should back the voice. Their own party notes were like, yeah, you should do this. It's very popular. But they always find a way to cock it up just in the most spectacular shit show you can ever imagine. Okay. And the thing is, they use the opposition leader who is on the second day of visiting Alice Springs to describe the law and order problems in the town of Travesty. He used the law and order line. Like, really? They're that devoid of a speech that they needed the law and order line. Look, I'm not saying that Alice Springs doesn't have its issues, like most of the country would. And it's trying to grapple with what you do with youth. But do you know what you don't do? You don't cut services from those towns to make sure youth crime is less, which is what you find in a lot of regional and remote areas. I come from one of them, and I know exactly how it worked. They would build the odd skate park, and then they would go away and go, look, we gave you a skate park. Everything else, it doesn't matter. And it treated the youth like they were just a joke. You couldn't hang around the mall because you didn't have enough money, most of you. I was one of those kids. I knew, you couldn't just be hanging around the mall, and you couldn't hang around in little groups because police are like, what are you kids up to? And it was always with the suspicion that you were doing something that was wrong because you were out. And that's why when parents started to bring in their kids, everyone was like, kids should be playing outside. Yeah, but when they were being told to go home because nothing good could happen if they were outside. It was a vicious cycle in rural areas, I would go to the beach and hang out with my friends and do all that kind of normal stuff. But a lot of the time, a lot of the adults would be like, oh, well, now it's after dark. You can't hang around here. And you'd be like, oh, why not? And then they'd be like, oh, well, because nothing good will happen. Well, prove it. You can't just say bad things are going to happen. They give you nothing to do, and then they slash all the funding, and then they go, there's crime, when bad things happen. I think that they should do more for kids. That's where I really think that there's more of a discussion around. There are stories that we've heard today as we walk to the streets about dysfunction and the desperation of young Indigenous kids who are being sexually assaulted, still on a regular basis. That hasn't stopped, Dutton told reporters. I will point out that this thing is nationwide. We just got off the back of a royal commission of a whole class of different religious organisations doing something very similar. I would be very careful if I was Peter Dutton. And then he was quite happy to rock up to George Pell's funeral. For a guy that's so anti-sexual assault, you think that George Pell's funeral would have been off the mark, right? A little bit rancid to turn up to that. That's what I mean. There's such a bad... it's so bad faith. I don't understand how we get to this point. It's ridiculous. And then he's claiming about nothing has changed since I was here in October. The same stories about break-ins, stolen cars, and risk of human life. About sexual assault of young boys and girls. Still exactly where it was back then. And this community can't wait. I now live in a southeast Queensland. And they're always on about the kids being out in Ipswich. And they're like, these kids can't be out, but they won't do anything with them. It's frustrating. You need to find things for these kids to do. They used to have discos and all this stuff, but you can never ever find them. They've got like this roller skating rink and a couple of other things in the movies, but we've still got this old age thing of really having things for people to do, even if it's like most of these kids they're reaching out to other kids, and some of these kids will do nefarious things, but they're very few and far between. I can promise you that. It is such a minority, because I was out there, I've seen it. There were kids doing things dodgy, but I can almost guarantee you that if we had better things to do, those things would not have happened. Well, probably, but not as, frequented. I didn't do dodgy things, if that's what you're thinking, but no, you need something out there. My daughter, like today, she made stuff. And I have to give her things to do. I have to give the kids activities and plan things, and because there's no outside place going, well, this is what we have for them. It's awful. Warden went on to say Dutton has had no interest in Alice Springs for 10 years. So the whole time they were in government, they weren't interested in any of this stuff. Now that the ALP is in, oh no, definitely Labor's fault. Definitely have to be there for that. Okay. A couple of months ago, we saw him fly in and out of Alice Springs and make a completely baseless claim around child sexual abuse in Alice Springs. That's harmful. These people deserve better than that. They truly do. And I think that that's going to really, really harm community. This isn't just in Central Australia. This is all around the nation. We need to find a way of dealing with youth. To minimise it and say, that that's only in Alice Springs that you're going to find problems, I think you're way off the mark, and it's racist to make that claim. I've seen it everywhere. I was born in Western Sydney, so I've seen a bit, and I know those kids. They're just kids, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. It's possible. So next one, then he jumps on with Jacinta Price, because Jacinta isn't happy to just ruin herself. She's wanting to ruin community while she's at it. And she stands back and plays an awful role and does a press with him, because this seems normal. Furious Peter Dutton snaps after being asked what evidence he has of ramping up on child sexual abuse in Alice Springs, and why he's rejecting the views of peak bodies. But before he can get completely humiliated, the broadcast is abruptly cut short. Watch Peter Dutton as he lashes out at a local Alice Springs reporter who pulls him up on facts. It brutally backfires on him, leaving Dutton's claim in ruins. And that's part of where we're at. He's got no leg to stand on.
The so-called rampant rates of child sexual abuse in Central Australia. Now, we've seen The Snake, which advocates for Indigenous children, come out and strongly reject your call for a Royal Commission into that. They've labelled it an uninformed approach. Why do you think those kind of peak bodies are rejecting those calls by you? And what evidence do you have that there is this so-called rampant child sexual abuse occurring in remote Central Australia?
Well, with respect, that's such an ABC question. Do you live locally? Do you speak to people on the streets? Do you hear what it is they're saying to you? Do you believe...
I live locally.
You live locally. You don't believe there's any problem here?
Okay, we've got to leave that there because...
And ABC cuts away from and says, okay, we've got to cut away from this, because they're embarrassed. They realise that Peter Dutton is trying to shame them when he's called out for his bullcrap. So even ABC wasn't strong enough to hold their ground on this. Dutton has to go right into the heartland of this region where Indigenous people can spot the racism from 100 metres away. He will learn nothing in the supermarkets. That's a political safe ground for him. It is. It really, really is. This is a bit of a sore point for me, because I know for a fact that it's not done directly, like where you can see it. Not most of it anyway. It's covenanted. And if Peter Dutton is making these claims, he has to make sure that the police are informed. every town is going to have its miscreants and its problems. And I've known those kids, and I was the idiot that you didn't tell. Because if you told, I would eventually tell someone like my older brother. That would eventually stop the little masquerades going on. And my older brother would go, no, if you stuff this up, you're going to stuff it up for everyone. So I was kind of a tattler. So I know how this stuff works. It's bad. There's nothing good that can come from what Peter Dutton is doing. If there's genuine crime and he has an issue with a crime that he knows of, and this Darren Chester, who he's gotten as his advocate in his wing, but that news reporter was right. He lives locally. He understands locally. He would be talking to people a lot because he lives there. And he wouldn't have to pose as the ABC reporter all the time, and they probably wouldn't even notice it. I've accidentally been caught up in that. Several years ago, I was out, and 25 years ago, I was out and about, and I didn't watch news. Suddenly, someone started asking me questions about something, and I stupidly verbally diarrheaed the whole thing, and then went, "Oh, and what's your name again?" Yeah, no, it's a bad idea when you start having people like me around. Okay, so there's that. But then turns out locals had a bit to say to him. Peter Dutton got told by locals that he'd misrepresented the whole thing. Turns out that he had this nice little Photoshop with locals, and he was more interested in talking about that welfare card. You know, that card that was limiting people from paying their rent and bills and all those normal things. It was supposed to allow them to do all that stuff, but it had like this limit. And you had to pay your rent a particular way, and it had to be with the particular services. It was stopping people from getting homes and a whole bunch of things, right? But Peter Dutton didn't go there to ask him about the voice. No, he went there to go, hey, what did you think of the healthy welfare card? You know, because he's an awful human being. Okay, the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, is being accused of misrepresenting his visit to Western Australia in the town of Lenora. The locals claiming he was more interested in their view on a cashless debit card and then canvassing their opinion on the Indigenous voice to Parliament. Dutton said he travelled to communities including Lenora, about 800 kilometres northeast of Perth, seeking grassroots opinions on the voice. This had helped inform the Liberal leader's decision to oppose the yes vote. However, locals who spoke to The Guardian say Dutton had limited discussion with them about the voice, including at a dinner with the Indigenous elders. Dutton tweeted a picture of the meeting, which took place in February. So, of course, even when he's having the meeting, where he should be asking the appropriate questions, and not just when he has a mic where he's asking questions. He didn't do it the 7 times that he had a meeting with Albanese and the Voice to Parliament structure. No, that would have taken work. You know, he's not interested in genuine questions. He's interested about image and how he can make it benefit him. It's disgusting, but it's true. And it gets way worse. James from a man from Mackay, I can't pronounce that, and his partner Samantha, I can't pronounce. Where do they get? Okay, they're amazing Aboriginal names, and I haven't been able to do it. Woman met Dutton. The pair claimed the visit was not about finding out what the people thought about the voice, was the main topics being the Inju card and social issues. No one has actually spoken to the about the voice to us in the visits from Peter Dutton, which is terrible, but yeah. Okay. But, okay. Then you got Kerry O'Brien. He calls it right out from the gate. Listen to what he says. Leading journalist Kerry O'Brien Grills Liberal Kerry Ann Little, who suggests journos are afraid to ask the LNPs tough questions on The Voice. The Voice has never had that chance, and Indigenous people have never been given that chance. This is the moment that we face.
Senator, the core of this is about respect. It was always my endeavour when I ask questions, no matter who I ask them of, with some very, very rare exceptions, like a Murphy figure in America, for instance, not politicians. I've always endeavoured to bring respect to my questions to politicians. So I think that when you say ask the tough questions, I think a journalist's approach should be the same on any question. First, they have to establish to their own professional satisfaction that it is a valid question and that it has been properly researched and that it is based on fact. Having established those principles, then I think it should not be that hard for them to couch a question that is on the one hand respectful, but nonetheless cuts to the core of the point. Now, whether some journalists are saying that they feel intimidated to ask quote unquote the tough questions, then I've got my own question mark about that, because I understand what it is to feel pressure. I understand what it is to walk the line in your journalism and stand up for the principles of your craft and face the judgment of the people that you are reporting to and the people you are reporting on. I think it's a matter of professionalism, and sometimes maybe it is a matter of fortitude, intestinal fortitude. But, you know, having asked the question, the tough question, you've also got to be able to live with it, and you've got to be able to justify it. And that goes back to the very first point. You need to be sure of your facts. You need to have thought it through carefully, and you need to approach it with a basis of respect. Can I just very, very quickly say something in conclusion, because I noticed all the other witnesses did, and this is like 30 seconds. The Voice has never had the chance. The voices of the past have never had the chance to build their own history. That is a real underpinning element of what is before us going up to this referendum. The Voice has never had that chance. Indigenous people have never been given that chance. That is the moment that we face.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
For me.
Okay. Okay. And then Barnaby throws his 2 cents into this. So check out how Barnaby handled it. Barnaby Joyce says that Labor hasn't released the wording to enshrine the Voice in Parliament and the Constitution. Is that correct? Turns out he's ill-informed. Okay, so again, they don't have to tell the truth. They know that all the details out there, and they're going to lie about it. That's where we're at. And I think that leaves it for tonight. Okay, I want to thank everyone that was able to join. If you tune in later, whether you watch me right through to the end, like, share, and comment. I appreciate your effort in turning up. Thank you to all my people that help out this channel. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Night.